So welcome to our podcast today, and today we have Dr. Shishir Miglani with us. He's a co-founder of Planck and InnoScale Global Solutions. So today we'll be talking about innovation, accelerators, incubators, etc. So sir, I would like to ask you कि आपकी journey कैसे रही and आपने कैसे start करा?
Thanks, Parina. My introduction is little varied. So I come from a technology background primarily.
Yes, sir.
And lately we have been working on the sustainable digital infrastructures, which are mostly around edge data centers and EV infrastructure charge.
Yes.
And the innovation which we are trying to bring here is to make them sustainable, as in to use 100% of the green power. And for that, we have been using a lot of innovative approaches and a lot of innovative methodologies. Mostly they are being brought forward by the startups which we are working with. So InnoScale Global Foundation runs multiple startup accelerators. Presently, we are running in 6 states, and one of them being in Bangalore, which is on sustainability as well. So therein, a lot of innovation around green energy, hybrid fuels, and other methodologies are giving their innovation to the society, and we are picking whichever the innovation works best with our system and giving them these startup founders the level playing field which they deserve. This modern and fast-changing world. This is my brief introduction about technology, and yes, around startup innovation, we have been into this business for 5 years now. Our startup incubators are recognized by Government of Uttar Pradesh, 2 of them, and one is also recognized by Startup India Seed Fund. So we are able to now, we find ourselves more capable to support startups with funds, not just from their grants, but also from our private kitty, which we do through syndications as such.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that. And sir, I would like to ask you that there are various types of grant available for startups. As you said that a few of your startups are recognized by Government of Uttar Pradesh as well. So I would like to ask you that how these grants are favorable for the startup and how they can avail them.
So I think for anyone who starts business first time or fresh business,
Yes, sir.
the key thing it starts with is money, of course, after idea. But yeah, to make it legally official business, you need money to set up the company. That you need money to pay salaries. You need money to work on operating cost. So money being an important criteria, and this was hampering a lot of ideas from startup. People have wonderful ideas, but they found themselves in a situation where either they didn't have money or they didn't have enough know-how to tackle the nuances. So for that matter, government mandated a Startup India policy under which they promoted entrepreneurship as such. And for that purpose, noticing this critical need, they have set up funds, not just the central government, but various startup governments, some large corporate bodies, banking systems, Yes Bank, HDFC Bank, they have their own funds as such. And these funds are very easily accessible by the startups. For example, in the state of Uttarakhand, DIC has a Startup India fund, and startups can avail that. It's a small fund, but it's a good ticket size for anyone to kickstart their company without having a pressure of money in their pockets. Other states, nearby states, Uttar Pradesh have their own funds. But the biggest one in news is Startup India Seed Fund, which offers up to 50 lakh worth of grant and convertible debentures. And I think that is good enough amount for any good idea to flourish as such. But this is not the end. There are METI grants, there are HDFC Parivartan grants, there are other DST grants which are available for the eligible startups therein. So I think these grants play a very critical role in establishing an ecosystem and in circumventing the critical need of money for various ideas.
Okay. So can you tell us a little more about कि startups इनको avail कैसे कर सकते हैं, like how they can apply and like which startups are eligible for it?
So, Abhita, it has become a very easy methodologies. Everything is on. Every state has online methodologies. I'm not sure of Uttarakhand. I think you need to send in an email with your pitch deck and stuff.
Okay.
And yes, there is a portal wherein you need to register your startup and apply for the grant for DIC there as well.
Okay.
But most of the states have their own portals, own platforms. where they promote the startups of their own state. So if we have a startup registered in Uttarakhand, he has to apply to Startup Uttarakhand government website to the DIC for the grant. If the startup is from Uttar Pradesh, he has to apply for Start in UP initiative, where they can apply for grants, and so on and so forth. But for central government, like for Startup India Seed Fund grant, it's an online portal and very effective portal there, and they keep on updating it. So newer things will come easy. It's again a very easy online system, but you need to have a DIP registration, Startup India certification, which is required. So you need to go to Startup India website, apply for DIP certificate. Once you get the DIP certificate, then you can apply for grant.
These are the prerequisites required.
Yes. So prerequisites are you should be a startup. Government of India recognizes 5 years in functioning to be termed as a startup. But for grants, you need to be less than 2 years old. And you should have a DIP certified startup. These are the two prerequisites essentially. And of course, a company is required, which should be a private limited or a fundable company essentially. The format should be public limited, private limited, or an LLP format, which are mostly in use to avail grants from startup industry.
Okay, so like non-profits cannot apply for it.
No, so non-profits are not for-profit startups.
Yeah.
As the name suggests. So they have to apply through different methodologies, different departments. There are CSR funds, there are NGO, there are website from government where they can apply for these grants.
Okay, so thank you for that information, sir. So moving on, I feel you have worked with lots and lots of startups. So are there any notable success stories जहाँ पर government funds ने like बहुत एक major impact play करा startup की journey में?
There are many stories, not just by scale, but I'm sure there are many stories hidden behind TBI that you have placed there. A couple of startups I have met in last few years. They are a true story in themselves. But yes, I do concur that facilitating these grants had given motivation to the entrepreneurs that they can start working without the worry of money. Yes, grants are a little slower to come, and I don't advise startups to depend upon grants for their day-to-day livelihood. But as and when grants come, they cover up the buffer which you have spent so far. And that's where you can, risk-free rather, I should say, work with your startup, take it to a certain level, hopefully get funding and make it a success. There are several stories where we have found that these startups have started small with little grant and they're growing big. Some of them are still utilizing various formats of grants. So one of the startup with us was Abhyom. It was India's first sustainable space tech startup.
Okay, in space tech.
Yeah, and it is coming from a very small town of Gorakhpur. Okay. That itself is a very commendable thing, and the founder and their team are very persistent in their approach. So they started with a small grant, UP state level grant, Startup India Seed Fund grant. And since then, they have grown up to be signing MOUs with ISRO. They have just launched their first test run facility for sustainable rocket facilities, and so on and so forth. They have been in the industry last 3 years, despite being in a capex intensive and very competitive space, very capital intensive. And probably they are very close to raising their first round now at a very decent valuation. So these are small baby steps, but some of the good success stories to look forward.
That is very true. You were telling me about like large scale startups are also taking grants. So can you explain more about it?
So yes, by default, grants are available for anyone which qualifies as startup.
Okay.
But there are certain restrictions by the government of India as such. So for example, if you're making enough of revenue, you don't need grants. So usually apply. But certain companies where research-based expenditure is high, they can still avail this grant.
Okay, so you should have a like R&D extensive business or startup for that.
Not really. R&D is extensive because the value is not that big. It's 20 lakh worth of grant fee, but rest 30 lakh is compulsory convertible debentures or debt instrument kind of a thing. But nonetheless, even bigger companies need grant support. So they apply for these grants, and in certain cases they get it. Especially if they are making too much of money, but the product is going strong as such.
Okay. So I would like to ask you, like, what are the main challenges faced by bootstrap startups instead of like when we raise money and then we start?
So I doubt there is any difference. But yeah, money can solve a lot of problems. So facing the same challenges with money is easier thing to attend. But usually the biggest challenge which startups focus is how to organize their team. And secondly is to find the product market fit for their startup ideation. So idea on a pitch deck, idea on a theoretical level, idea on a POC level works very well. But when it goes into the real market, real scenarios, it might behave differently. And you need to understand and tweak and tuck in the shape of the product into a product market fit version. That sometimes takes time. For larger projects and bigger cost-intensive projects like space tech or others, it might take even months and years for that matter. But perseverance is the key here as such. So these are the two biggest challenges which I feel are present with every startup or any business for that matter which happens, barring the trading and services stuff, etc. Where you deliver what the customer is asking you. But here you are taking something to the customer. And these two challenges have their own set of problems. For Bootstrap, it's like they cannot spend too much of R&D. So we suggest them that they should do small piecemeal things, baby steps, You test it with few, come back, take the feedback. Test it with others, come back, take the feedback. People with money, they'll do it differently. They'll probably do a larger thing, take multiple feedbacks and push it forward if the product market fit is a problem. But as I said, having money makes a lot of things easier. So even you can push through the product in a lot of other ways. Bootstrapping gives you growth as well, but bootstrapping, despite being a very favorable and fundamentally controlled thing for a founder over their startup, slows down the pace of growth. Gives you pressure of cost cutting or cost controls and pressure of not investing enough in the research. But having said that, the outcomes are also beautiful. You own 100% of your equity. You own 100% of your company if you're making it through Bootstrap. And maybe while bootstrapping, you reach it to a certain stage, whether you derive a better valuation of the company, even if you're getting funded.
You'll be able to dilute a little less.
Yes. So it's advisable to start Bootstrap, but some projects just need a lot of money to kickstart. And therein, probably starting with an investment is a better approach.
And like, if somebody is starting a bootstrap startup, so what advice do you have for them? Like, what strategies could make them successful?
So बड़ा स्टैंडर्ड सा आंसर होगा मेरा इसमें, जब भी तंगी हो तो खर्चे कम करो. And for bootstrap startup, this is the key. You need to spend very cautiously because you have limited amount. Time is equal for everyone. So you need to spend that money very wisely. Deploy your baby steps. Do not try to make the entire product and then take it to the market. Especially if the product can be tested like software or SaaS.
Stages में develop कर सकते हैं.
If these are deep tech projects, you can develop into stages, certain stages, test it whether it is working as per the desire, and then come back. Rather than what happens is, mostly I see founders are so engrossed with their product that they want to make it complete before they test it, without realizing that it might have a fundamental flaw at the first stage itself. So you can save money, and software or deep tech based projects are huge cost outgo. And if you're spending that money unwisely, then of course you will run out of gas even before the race is complete or started, for that matter. So this is one key thing which I would advise to anyone for that matter, but for bootstrap startups, it is of primary importance.
Okay. So sir, what I feel is that you are running an accelerator, and sir, how are accelerators and incubators useful for startups, and like how would you say कि ये बहुत important है for early stage startups?
So I think accelerators and startups are the key for any startup or innovation ecosystem to grow.
Okay.
They bring in a lot of valuable inputs that are required, starting with structured knowledge, mentorship, focused approach, and now funding too. It could be in terms of private equity like syndications, angel funding, and it is also done through grants and other possibilities. So even Government of India or any state government, they do not directly fund startups. They fund it through an entity Okay. Which could be an accelerator or incubator.
Okay.
And this is how the ecosystem grows.
Okay.
So they play a very critical role, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities where knowledge base penetration of internet is not that much high. Now it is of course very high, but nonetheless the knowledge base works differently. Competitive marketplace works differently. Probably competition ही कई जगह नहीं होता है तो दूसरे challenges आ जाते हैं. So उन challenges को focus करने के लिए Government of India has mandated to set up startups, incubators and accelerators even in local colleges and universities, and in some cases to schools as well.
Yeah.
And they bring in valuable information there. So you sitting in a capital city of Uttarakhand probably have much easier access to a lot of information, but somebody in a rural belt of Uttarakhand will not have that much of access. And these incubators will bring in those knowledge base, those support system, so that entrepreneurship at rural base or remote areas of the country can also flourish for that matter. So that's, I think they act as a backbone for the entire innovation background as such.
Like hand holding kar pate hain, and they are able to like take you to the places.
Yes, of course. So if you get incubated, you get 9 months of hand holding.
Yeah.
You'll get post-production hand holding.
Yeah.
You guys work with giving them projects and getting the POCs of their products done post the incubations. So those supports are required for them, and accelerators and startup do provide those supports to them.
Okay. I have a very basic question. Like, what is the difference? What do you feel is the difference between incubators and accelerators for the people watching this podcast?
Fundamental difference is that incubator, as the name suggests, it is when the ideas, the entire business is at the idea level.
Yeah.
You incubate, you warm it up, it up so that it hatches out and an enterprise comes out of it. But accelerator, as the name suggests, you are already running a startup. You're making some traction. You find your product market fit near about, and then you need to scale.
Okay.
So the fundamental difference is incubators are those startups which come at the idea level. They need nurturing, lot of hand holding and everything. While accelerator में वो startups आते हैं who already are running their business, have certain traction in the market, have found certain closure to the product market fit, and they are looking to scale up to a different level. For example, let's take it, incubators is 0 to 1, accelerator is 1 to 5.
Okay, 1 to 5.
Yeah, exactly. So then, of course, you have to change gears and stuff.
That's it. Okay. So the last question for today, sir. Let's say you are going to run a startup today. So आपको क्या लगता है, sir? आप उसका क्या process रखोगे, and how will you start it, and like how you will take in incubators, funding and all. अगर आप एक process समझा पाते लोगों के लिए, जो क्योंकि like most of the people are going to start it and most people are going to get inspired and they want to know the process कि कैसे start होगा, फिर कहाँ जाएगा, फिर what will we are going to do, like what are the goals.
So वैसे आंसर इतना easy नहीं है जितना आपने पूछा है मुझसे. But nonetheless, I would always suggest that even before setting up a company, you need to have an idea.
Yeah.
And idea needs to be validated. You just cannot start setting up companies just because you have coming up with an idea. So you get an idea, you validate whether the idea works, you test the idea in a small sample, and once you find that idea is working as per your thought process and as per your desire, then you convert it into business models.
Okay.
And then you should form a company essentially, because company forming is a liability.
Yeah,
It's a compliance responsibility as well. And this entire stage till the company formation would probably need 6 months or a year as well.
Yeah.
And you should not be spending money or taking up compliances unnecessarily until the idea is validated. Now, once it is validated, you set up a company, of course. You take the basics of the company, MSME certifications, it's help you with other necessaries. It facilitates a lot of grant support. You register in Startup India portal, get the DIP certification, apply for grants, apply for your state-based grant support system as well. And then while this is happening and grants are coming, you are trying to find your customers.
Okay.
You are trying to sell the product or the services, whichever is ready. And that's key importance. If you're able to sell the services, then you are anyway making revenues from your business. And if that revenue is enough for you to sustain your operating cost, you do not really need grants. But yes, keep applying for grants. They come in handy, and whenever you need them for research or you need them on a dry day or whenever you are running out of or not having enough revenue, that comes in.
So thank you, sir, for joining in today and sharing the valuable insights of people. And guys, thank you for watching, and do follow us for more podcasts like